Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at a RGB LED Nixie clock, kind of a cool desk gadget, and it's trying to simulate Nixie displays, also known as cold cathode displays, which have a glass and in the inside wire meshes that illuminate to show a number or digit basically stacked on top of one another in different layers, making it look really cool, as well as the digit themselves being super bright in this kind of vintage retro form. So this was used in alarm clocks, calculators, even watches of the past, but of course this tech later grew out of favor compared to LCD screens, which are much cheaper to manufacture. But there's something beautifully retro and just cool about these Nixie tube displays, which is why this form has seen a little bit of a resurgence in the last couple of years. This version here, though, is still a simulated model because it's still technically using LED lights. It shines underneath a piece of glass, which is etched with the digits to illuminate it, instead of it actually being a light bulb with a wire mesh on the inside, which is a little bit more fragile, and perhaps more importantly, the LED version here is a lot more cost effective, typically selling for under $70 compared to real Nixie tubes can actually cost hundreds of dollars. But there's a lot of different forms of these floating around, various ones which have kind of a simulated glass dome on top, other ones which have more of a square appearance, and there's even versions floating around that really just uses a LED or IPS LCD screen, I should say, and you use an app to basically control what the watch dials look like, and everything can be programmed electronically. Here's another variant of that. But the version that we have here is going to be one of the more affordable ones. It does have real wood as well as glass for all of the etched numbers that are on here as well, and there's even two variants of this particular design. One which is pre-assembled out of the box, you can immediately start using it, and another one which is a little bit cheaper but requires some DIY assembly, primarily installing the screws as well as removing the tape from the pieces of glass. So if you're more of a hobbyist, you like building things yourself, then perhaps that DIY kit version might make sense. It could be a little bit of a fun activity and also save you a couple of bucks versus the pre-built version. Now this particular model is also kind of interesting because it has built-in Wi-Fi. This allows you to more quickly sync the time information over from your smartphone without having to manually click on the buttons on the back like on a conventional alarm clock. So it's always going to remain accurate in terms of timekeeping and also allow you to control things like color as well as the animation patterns a little bit more easily. And aside from telling time, it can also be used as an alarm with a small speaker there to wake you up. Also keep in mind that the cost may slightly vary depending on the number of tubes, aka that you have on the alarm clock. So for example, if you have 6 slots, it also tells you the seconds versus the 4 slot version that we have here just tells you the hour and minutes. The larger version usually being a little more expensive, but also takes up a bit more space on your desk. Now, the way that this functions is actually quite similar to some of those 3D holographic table lamps, or really mood lamps that we have seen in the past, which again shines over an acrylic piece of plastic or glass and illuminates it, making a fairly convincing effect for something which is relatively simple, just LED light here on the base. It's basically doing the exact same thing on this Nixie clock, however it has more pieces to create the kind of three-dimensional effect, and of course more lights underneath that will shine through the individual panels of glass. Nonetheless, it is quite clever. Now on the inside here, we of course have the actual clock. It is presented pretty well, and on the inside here we also have just a quick user guide, and it also tells you how to connect it using Wi-Fi to your phone or computer. And what is really interesting here is they're not using a companion app that you have to download. Instead, your phone just needs to connect to this device's Wi-Fi network, and it will automatically open up a page in the web browser for you to control things. So it's all done over the web. You don't have to actually install anything physically, storage-wise, on your phone's memory. We also have a soft microfiber cloth to wipe down the glass, essentially, to prevent any smudges on it. And this was actually the DIY kit variant, although again it's essentially the same thing whether it's pre-built or not. In our case though, because it is the version that you have to assemble yourself, it also comes with some of the aforementioned screws. You also get an extra set including a plastic kind of edge piece there to hold the glass slides into place, and also an extra set of the glass digits. You have just numbers etched basically into the glass by some form of laser engraver, I suspect, and afterwards you just have to peel off the film on the front and the back of the glass to reveal the actual card that you slide into the slots to form the digits here, again spanning from 0 to 9, and then it will illuminate the corresponding part to tell you the accurate time. So the overall assembly process, if you're getting the DIY variant, takes about 20 to 25 minutes, just depending on how quickly you're able to basically peel off all the pieces of tape on the glass here and then just screw in the top here. Even the screwdriver is included in the box along with a USB Type-C cable there for providing power. And now just a quick look at the finished product. Again, you do have real wood as well as some aluminum metal accents for the base here, plus this is real glass on each of the digits. On the back here is where we have the USB Type-C port for power, as well as some additional keys if you want to set the time manually, if not connecting it via Wi-Fi, and also going through some of the preset animations on board as well. Segmenting the minutes as well as the hours is also another small LED piece that will glow in the middle there just to add a little bit more of ambiance. And then on the very bottom here, it continues with the wood finish. Perhaps the only thing I would like to see in a revision would be some soft touch rubber feet to prevent it from sliding around on the surface or desk, because right now it is a little bit on the slippery side, but something that you can always fix or DIY yourself. Now I'll also point out that like most alarm clocks, of course, it doesn't come with a built-in battery. It does need to be plugged in at all times, or you can use a power bank or wall adapter to provide juice. That being said, it does have intelligent memory of sorts, and that is even without connecting it to your Wi-Fi internet network, it still has a built-in memory function that can keep the time even when you are unplugged for a couple of days. And when we plug it in, you'll hear a small beep, so that is basically the built-in speaker, and it will flash a little bit before settling on the time. What I will say though is compared to actual Nixie tubes in which the wires themselves are passing through the current and getting illuminated, it's going to be a little darker in terms of the brightness level since this is shining underneath across the entire glass slide. So you do have to be in a slightly more dim environment to get the best effect. It doesn't have to be necessarily pitch dark, but at the same time, darker will get you a more clear view of the digits that you are seeing here. That being said, even if you are tilting the device slightly, you can still mostly make out the time, again 7:50, and part of that kind of charm of Nixie tube displays, which is using those stacked digits, you get that same impression here as you have a faint outline of some of the other numbers, and there is that real sense of depth if you're looking at it from a side. It is just one of those kind of retro designs which still just seems really cool after all of these years, despite Nixie tubes being invented way back in the 1950s. Pressing on the up and down arrow keys on the back here also allows you to change the brightness. So this is the maximum brightness of those LED lights. Again, looking pretty good. Although you can also make it dimmer, and this is the dimmest setting. It becomes a lot more faint depending on, again, your surroundings. Then this is what it looks like just on the side of your bed. It doesn't become too distracting and wake you up at night. So pretty thoughtful in those different brightness levels that you can jump between. And otherwise, we can tap on the mode key there to basically cycle through some different animation styles, illustrating some of those effects. You can also tap on the side there to go through some numbers that will then transition before going back into the time. So overall, it is quite playful, and here's another example, cycling through various digits and numbers while it's on the animated kind of wallpaper mode, essentially. So it kind of reminds me of something like a RGB mechanical keyboard in the sense where there are just tons of these different effects that makes it look really cool if you are just displaying it on your desk. Overall, it's a dazzling and pretty beautiful looking effect. Now, taking a look at the aforementioned Wi-Fi mode, you can just connect to the ClockTech device here just by tapping along, and then it will then automatically trigger into the web page as aforementioned. So from here, you're able to connect the clock to your actual Wi-Fi router if you want it to be connected to the internet to sync time automatically by itself, but this is completely optional. By default, if you're just connecting it with your phone, it will sync the time over from your phone. And you're also able to choose what type of time zone you're in, whether you want 12 or 24-hour formats, and then from this long list, you'll be able to then tap on connect and it will push the time over to the clock. You can also play around with the animation style. For example, under rainbow, they will all be set at the same color and then flow together, compared to the gradient, in which they will all represent a different color of the rainbow for every single tube, as you can tell there, and then slowly change back and forth. This one here, called flow gradient, is a more subtle version of, again, each of the colors being a little bit different, and then kind of rippling from left to right in the colors of the rainbow. Or you can also choose a completely customized method in which every single digit of the tube you're able to customize using the wheel over here. For example, we've selected the leftmost tube here to be completely blue, versus the next one here I've selected to be green, but I can also choose something like white color instead if I prefer. The next one here being purple, I can also change it back into something like blue, as you can tell there. The final one here just being a little bit more of a red or violet. So it is surprisingly easy to customize using that web page app, basically, and everything is still quite responsive. doing exactly what it's advertised to do. Now, maybe the only thing I would like to see added to that web app in the future would be more control over maybe how long you want it to have the time being shown before cycling through some of the animation modes. For example, having the time being shown for 10 seconds versus 20 seconds before then going into that flashing mode. Or if you want to turn all the effects completely off, for example. So that is more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the Clocktek RGB LED Nixie clock, modernizing certain elements, including the built-in Wi-Fi for quicker time syncing, as well as being really customizable in all the colors of the rainbow that you can set it to, compared to actual Nixie tubes, which only have a single yellowish color, for example. So those are some of the benefits of a model like this, and ultimately does a pretty convincing job, I have to say, for something that is relatively more affordable, as well as still quite beautiful looking when you're placing it on your desk. So if you're looking for an interesting timepiece, this might be another very cool desk gadget to consider, and you can learn more details if interested in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the RGB LED Nixie clock from Clocktek.